It is time for our deep dive. Number 5, front and center this morning, is Citigroup's annual shareholders meeting. Just started a few moments ago. At the top of today's agenda, a vote on whether to defer a chunk of the top executives' pay for 10 years. Use that money to cover fines if the bank behaves badly. Is that going to pass muster at the shareholders meeting? I want to bring in Bloomberg's Michael Moore, who covers Wall Street banks for us. So what are the chances that shareholders will actually vote that into action?
Not so great. The board is against it. Some of the proxy advisory services are against it. So in that case, it usually doesn't pass, but it may start a discussion.
Yeah.
Citigroup's the only major bank this year with their meeting in New York. So you have some more analysts there. You have some more investors there. There may be more of a discussion.
So there will be more of a
this.
debate, possibly.
Right.
Okay. So what do the shareholder services groups like? What do they say is the reason why they don't think this is a good move?
I think they say it's not necessary. You already have deferred pay.
Okay.
Banks think they're through the worst of the fines from the crisis. So I think there's some thought that this is backward looking.
Oh, and it's not going to be any more incentive, I guess, in their view, right? Or incentive to not take risks.
Presumably, they already have incentive not to get fined.
Right, exactly. You would hope.
Right, but it does show that shareholders are a bit frustrated from constantly having to pay the legal tab here, and we haven't seen, for the most part, individuals held liable.
Okay, now you mentioned that this is is this the only bank that's holding their shareholders meeting in New York this time? Okay,
the only major one.
The only major one. Okay, so why is that significant?
Well, we've seen since the crisis, 2009, 2010, some of these meetings got pretty heated. There were a lot of angry shareholders. You had a lot of lost value. And since then, we've seen a lot of the banks kind of travel across the country.
Right, they took it on the road.
Right. They say they're trying to highlight things outside of their headquarters, but the tangential benefit is that these meetings outside of New York tend to be less attended, and there's a lot less debate, and they go through pretty quickly. Goldman's been on the road the last couple of years, and the meetings are over in under an hour, and it's there's not as many tough questions. Yeah.
Right, I mean, because then all the analysts have to pack up and go somewhere. All the major shareholders or whatnot, they all have to go travel to wherever, Charlotte or Detroit or wherever other place that they've done this. Okay, let's talk about Michael Corbat and his pay, because I know you just mentioned this pay proposal. It's likely not going to pass, but there's going to be focus also on just how much he's being paid, right? And if you look at Corbat versus, guys, let's bring up that chart. If you look at Corbat versus the other CEOs, among Wall Street firms, he's actually one of the least paid among them, right?
Right. Yeah, and he was down last year. The others were up. Michael Mayo's raising, who will be at the meeting, at Citigroup's meeting now, and he's raised the question of why wasn't he cut more, because Citi didn't have a great year last year, and you want to tie pay to performance. But he's definitely on the lower end of the major banks, and he's also the only one that has a separate chairman at this point. Now that Brian Moynihan has both of the roles, most of the banks, have one person in the chairman and CEO role.
Right.
But Corbat has someone to answer to in the chairman role.
Right, and presumably that's going to be good for shareholders then. Is there anything else, Michael, that's going to be really heated or that's really on the radar here for this meeting?
I think across the meetings at the banks, there's going to be some discussion of the politics connection, the D.C. connection. You've got some shareholder proposals about disclosing lobbying expenses at the banks. You've got some shareholder proposals about disclosing information about vesting of pay for people who go to work in government jobs. So, the election coming up next year, I think there's some discussion of how closely tied is Wall Street to D.C., and what should they know about those connections?
And have those issues been raised before, or are we starting to see sort of more intensity on that?
I think there's a little more intensity this year, especially on some of the lobbying things and the pay vesting proposals are often pushed by AFL-CIO. That's been a new push this year. So there's always been this question. I think it's intensifying a bit.
All right, Michael, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.